What began as a solemn, seemingly benign 10th anniversary commemoration for Prince Harry's celebrated Invictus Games descended into unmitigated chaos this month. The international competition honoring wounded veterans through sporting exhibitions was meant to represent the embodiment of perseverance and inspiration overcoming daunting adversity. Instead, the marquee milestone ended up reflecting an even more dismaying spectacle of the Sussexes' apparently cancelled credibility amongst those they once championed with such fervent advocacy. In an unprecedented revolt unseen across the game's decade-long history, over 1,000 military veterans spanning multiple nations have now withdrawn their participation from the upcoming Colorado Springs event. The mass exodus represents a full quarter of intended competitors originally slated to convene in the Rocky Mountain staging grounds at the culmination of years-long rehabilitation regimens tailored toward suiting up for this very Ruby anniversary gala. Behind the jaw-dropping defections lies a volatile brew of simmering resentments toward the erstwhile royal patrons Prince Harry and wife Meghan, whose once towering platforms now stand shockingly diminished across huge swaths of their former devotees. This competition used to mean absolutely everything that made struggling to overcome worth enduring the darkest, most spirit-crushing suffering one could fathom, U.S. Army Staff Sergeant Brendan Walker said from his home in Fayetteville, North Carolina, while describing why he agonizingly elected to boycott the milestone proceedings after dedicating years toward qualifying. But after the way they stabbed so many of us in the back with their selfish publicity antics and constant trading on the clout that made their very foundation possible? That betrayal signals this whole operation's purpose has become hopelessly perverted beyond any chance of achieving its original healing impact, and that's what cuts deepest of all. Such bitterly disillusioned tones from the very demographic the games were created specifically to uplift resonate with particular poignancy for observers who can still vividly recall just how feverishly the Wounded Warriors demographic once rallied behind Prince Harry's budding passion project all those years ago. For the higher-profile soldiers and vets whose lives were irreparably shattered by grievous battlefield injuries, having a prominent member of the British royal family leveraging his worldwide media magnetism to amplify awareness for their struggles represented something of an ultimate redemption arc's light at the tunnel's end. We all recall when Prince Harry first conceived of the Games as a basic therapeutic rehab regimen for his most devastatingly handicapped military mates back in 2014. Reflected British Army Major Philip Eagleton, who served several traumatizing post-9/11 deployments before eventually losing the use of his legs. There were so many of us left permanently shattered, either visibly or worst of all, the invisible wounds corroding our spirits, that the very notion of a universally respected figurehead blazing such a high-profile trail for us transcended anything we could have ever envisioned in our bleakest night terrors. For many of the Invictus movement's pioneering vanguard, Harry launching such an ambitious global consortium to shine unprecedented spotlight upon their arduous journey from life's most abysmal depths back toward reclaiming senses of purpose instantly lofted him to near saintly apotheosis. After over a decade spent drifting across faceless statistical databases and squalid medical triage figures, regaining basic self-actualization motivation within an arena where heroic perseverance could be showcased ultimately proved nothing short of life-saving for many who previously saw no point even attempting reintegration. So impactful were His Royal Highness's bootstrap-lifting efforts at destigmatizing disabilities, some even credited the very existence of events like the Warrior Games and U.S. Paralympics with roots tracing directly toward Harry's paradigm-shifting vision elevating their plight to international cause célèbre status. Our prince understood from day one that aiming to spackle our irreparable psychological fractures with mere awareness hashtags or charity galas would never be enough, recounted British Army Captain Andrew Collier, who lost both legs to an IED while bravely searching for the family trapped inside a collapsed Syrian home. The only path toward achieving any sort of meaningful, lasting revival for us in the wake of such staggering debilitation could come through regaining agency and motivation, starting with something as basic as believing we still possessed gifts worth showcasing on any sort of skills-based competitive stage again. Of course, Prince Harry's earnest warrior patronage pursuits from the outset always felt destined to generate ancillary public relations benefits for the royals piggybacking his charitable initiative. Yet few begrudged whatever incidental burnishing of Buckingham branding might accrue from the game's escalating success, especially while the endeavor remained purely aimed at bringing renewed dignity to those permanently bearing war's most psychically scarring aftermaths. In fact, many veterans who eventually became global ambassadors for the exhibition came to view the residual curating bumps as a fair barter for the opportunities Harry created to finally emerge from society's shadows into the footlights of newfound inspiration. There's no denying the royals attracted a ton of fresh eyeballs spotlighting our struggles in ways no other celebrities or marketing campaigns ever could, recalled former U.S. Army Sergeant Pete Graves, who became an inaugural Invictus outreach icon after being severely burned across 3/4 of his body in a homemade IED blast. But to us trailblazers who were literally plucked by Harry from permanent obscurity's dank oubliette, we all sort of developed this internal philosophy that, if global curiosity and social media chatter brought millions more into our fold and accelerated the impact of showing kids with triple amputations that their lives maintained unmaximized potential, we'd simply shrug off any pearl-clutching about royals reaping good public relations windfalls. All such mutual understandings and hesitant acceptances for the quid pro quo delicately balancing Harry's PR agendas with the vet's regained senses of pride ended up abruptly disintegrating over the past 3 years, however. The once transcendent patron found his own credibility hopelessly corroded in parallel with a devastating leak of scorched earth memoirs and inflammatory TV spectacles designed solely to immolate his family's honor at the expense of their most sacrosanct ancestral institutions. Sprinkled amidst the shock tactic slanders and hyperbolic calumnies lobbed by the Montecito royal exiles, a disturbing pattern of gaslighting seemed to emerge, repeatedly negating the very same veteran outreach platforms previously brandished as unassailable martyrdom badges. Now the very same wounded troops and military alumni who'd once represented the ultimate redoubt of unconditional Sussex advocates felt themselves unceremoniously conscripted into serving as human shields blocking incoming fire from critics about the couple's naked self-obsessions eclipsing philanthropic intent. Virtually overnight, thousands of former diehard royal patrons, people literally remolded by Harry's own warrior legacy initiatives from permanent forgotten outcasts into confident examples of triumphant human resilience, found themselves being unforgivably deployed as pawns in optics wars while wondering whose real agendas were being championed after all. Everything we represented seemed to take a drastic back seat to the Markles' personal quests for adulation and renegade redemption once they started bargaining about castles full of racists freezing out America's diversity messiah and his light-bringing muggles, growled U.S. Army Corporal Amber English, who lost her eyesight to an Al-Qaeda sniper during the Helmand insurgency before finding renewed purpose performing archery demonstrations at Invictus trials. It was like, hold up your applause plaudit signs a little higher next time so we can obscure the real Buckingham briar patches blighting our inclusive truth rosebush cred, and by the way, sorry you got tossed aside as just another neglected combat vet yet again. While the Invictus Games ambassadorial contingent largely managed to downplay such accumulating grievances as detached media spectacles throughout 2020 to 2021, their frustrations steadily ballooned toward outright rage over 2022 and into 2023. Coming amid a parade of increasingly cringe-inducing exploitation and culture warring from the Montecito renegades, the literal combat veterans formerly lionized now felt overtly weaponized, gawking in horror as Harry himself cynically strode onto various global platforms incessantly pawning off their sordid battlefield experiences for sympathy while denigrating the troops beside whom they served. Between the